Our next speaker is Dr. Nathan Augspurger. He's Vice President of Animal Nutrition and Health at the United Soybean Board. In his presentation, Future Research Opportunities for Soybean Meal in Swine Production.
There we go. Well, thank you, David. And thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. I do want to express a particular thanks to our swine commercial team that has put in a lot of effort over certainly the last few months to put this together, but the last few years to expand and really draw out these particular value propositions that around soybean meal in swine production, a lot of which you've heard today. And also thanks to each of our speakers and the information and foundation they've brought. My target here is just to simply offer some additional thoughts and opportunities around future research areas as we look at soybean meal in swine production. Certainly there are additional questions to further vet out these particular value propositions that we've talked about here today in terms of the energy value of soybean meal and the predictability of it, the opportunities around maximizing performance, minimizing the carcass dip in summer, and the health areas. What I'm going to do is try and go beyond that and just offer some thoughts around a few different areas to expand our understanding. And really to start out, the expanding that has to really focus on, keep the focus on the swine herd productivity, the productivity of the animals that turns into and supports profitability of our producers, profitability of our industry, and focused on particularly identifying the mechanisms and really the reasons why we're going to use soybean meal for particular outcomes. What this team has accomplished over the last few years, and our speakers have identified here today around, our recent learnings around, increased energy value. There's certainly greater productive energy in bean meal for terminal pig production today, as Dean mentioned, and there's a lot of other data to support that around greater productive energy and its impact on performance and value. Producer profit potential is, when soybean meal is utilized according to a lot of these outcomes is maximized with when the those financial and economic opportunities are right, as David and Bart have noted that it is a tool to maximize profitability and maintain that throughout the year. And then part of the opportunity here that was mentioned is in that health area, the opportunity that soybean meal brings and its total composition, the composition around isoflavones, saponins, other antioxidants that support the resilience of these animals through, at the very least, respiratory challenges that they experience throughout their productive life. So we want to look at, as we continue to think about the composition of that soybean meal, what is that bringing? What have we learned in the terminal animal that we can take into other areas? Certainly I want to suggest there's opportunities in the breeding herd to continue to differentiate soybean meal's value, but then certainly support the productivity of our sows and developing gilts and pre-wean pigs. Particular areas we look at the composition around, continue to look at immunocompetence, but also the opportunity that soybean meal may bring to support the vaccine responsiveness of our animals and further support the health of our swine herds. And also a little bit of a different one would be around in the area of swine pork or pork quality. Several of our speakers have talked about the composition of isoflavones, saponins, other antioxidants, and their impact on health, possibly impact on productive energy. But also those are molecules that could impact the quality of the pork that's produced, both in terms of fresh or ground meat, but also in whole meat, whole muscle cuts that are stored over a longer period of time. So I want to give a few sort of thoughts in each of those areas, and certainly there's others that we could spend a whole lot more time talking about. As we look at the breeding herd productivity, there has been some work recently in the lactation area. As we look at the inclusion rate of soybean meal, there to the right, yeah, that is right. As a recent data set from the Carthage group showing that as soybean meal has increased from 20% of the diet to 35 in roughly a 21-day lactation, that with energy in the diet or fat addition to the diet varied with increasing soybean meal, that feed intake of those sows is reduced by a little bit. That's there. However, those animals are still producing the same number of pigs at the same amount of weight at weaning. And there's other data sets there that suggest continued opportunity there. What we don't have, or what is a gap, is a significant amount of work in the area in the gestating sow. There are the work that has been done has been focused primarily on that last 15 to 20 days prior to farrowing, and that does show value and some opportunity there if the systems are set up to take advantage of those. But the opportunity, as we look at the lifetime productivity of our sows, their body condition recovery, their opportunity to produce high-quality pigs that survive, certainly through the pre-weaning period, but also into there, is an opportunity to continue to learn. A recent experiment from Hans's lab has shown what some of that opportunity might be as he looked at their work there on the left at, for the predominance of gestation, providing a diet that's providing 13 grams a day of SID lysine, either from a low or a higher soybean meal diet, did show significant differences in nitrogen retention of those gestating sows, but also the observation of an increase in the colostrum immunoglobulin content. So I think there's certainly opportunity as we look at the breeding herd productivity, certainly in the gestating sow area. And if we come back, obviously there's less and less work in the developing gilt there as well as we think about that. The immunocompetence area we talk about, several of our speakers touched on the area of utilizing soy as a prescriptive agent, a prescriptive ingredient to support animals through respiratory disease stress, with the hypothesis and data around the isoflavone content supporting that. There are other questions here, certainly get to intestinal immunity and barrier integrity, systemic, metabolic, and immune support of the whole soybean meal package. There's some interesting data that came out of the University of Georgia from broilers that showed a high crude protein, high soybean meal diet actually supported greater barrier integrity gene expression than lower soybean meal, lower crude protein diets, whether it was soybean meal or corn DDGS or canola meal. But it also, as we look at vaccine response of these animals to a diet, they also showed that as the protein source, the predominant protein source was soybean meal versus either canola meal or DDGS, that those soybean meal diets actually supported a greater IgA response to a cocci vaccine in those birds than either of the other two protein sources. So leading to kind of the question, does that translate to pigs? Does it translate to sows? Does it translate to growing pigs? Is there an opportunity there to increase the effectiveness of our health protocols using this feedstuff? And then certainly the soybean meal that I think Dean has either maybe coined the phrase, or I've just heard it so much from him that I think of his words, as a prescriptive complement to a health program. If you're Ryan Dilger and his lab has done a lot of work on really the basic mechanisms by which isoflavones and saponins interact with the animal's health immune system. And if you're earlier around, his student Cameron gave a very nice talk earlier this morning on saponins and their interaction in the immune system. But as this is on the far right, showing that actual isoflavones, so the isolated isoflavones supported, attenuated the inflammatory response mechanisms in swine, and that's part of Brooke Smith's work in the earlier this decade. And then, using the same types of view around composition in terms of pork quality. This one's obviously a little different. We can look at breeding herd productivity, the growing pig, the opportunities, energy, inclusion rate, supporting performance. That all has a direct payback to on-farm or live operation profitability. This one's a little different than that. This one doesn't necessarily have that immediate payback from a live operations perspective. But as you look at the antioxidant components or antioxidant potential that soybean meal brings, there's in terms of isoflavones, potentially saponins, and the phytosterols there on the left. There is a hypothesis that those materials bringing opportunities in improving or maintaining water holding capacity and the other quality metrics for both and shelf life for pork and meat products. And just a very preliminary data set from a few years ago showing that the oxidative or antioxidative potential in terms of gene expression and then an actual direct measure of drip loss were improved through these soy isoflavone, tocopherol, and other antioxidant additions to the diet. So certainly it's a very preliminary type of question, but an opportunity that could manifest for our industry. So as we look at capturing these and potentially other value streams with soybean meal, soy products, as we look at the future of swine production, first and foremost, we have to be guided by commercial value. The economic value of any of this needs to lead to the profitability of our producers, of our industry. We need to be able to utilize in a targeted way the research technologies available to us that look at the whole animal and the systems that are evaluated on the whole animal. Utilizing the directed use of artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities for analyzing large data sets, for hypothesis generation. Certainly on the health area, the health and behavior, these types of opportunities are being expanded upon much more rapidly than in the nutrition area, but is certainly another opportunity to evaluate. And then at the end of the day, obviously, we need to be able to validate these opportunities, these economic values in commercial production for their impact in our systems and in our industry. So with that, last year, the United Soybean Board launched a new website that it is all-encompassing for animal nutrition and animal health work. It's called the U.S. Soy Center for Animal Nutrition and Health. The H is silent and absent from that, but it's can.ussoy.org. There are pages, obviously for swine, also for a few other animals, poultry and dairy and beef. So I invite you to go to, we intend for that to be a one-stop shop for research, industry news, allied news, et cetera, for our industry. I have been told that all of the hardbacks of the Feedstuff series are gone. So if that is something you'd like, feel free to scan the QR code here. There is a contact or connect button or link, and just feel free to drop us a note saying, "Hey, I'd like a hardback," and we'll get that sent out and figure that out. So, with that, David, hand it back to you.